Hey guys, JK Wargames, and today we're going to do a review of Fields of Fire 2nd edition. I have to say a massive thanks to GMT Games for sending this to the channel. So without further ado, let's get into it. So Fields of Fire has a reputation of being a very hard game to learn, and I'm not going to lie, it was a steep learning curve, but once you learn this game, it is fantastic. It's a game of commanding your platoons and assets to achieve your objective, and the game is card driven. I'm sure most of you watching this have heard of Fields of Fire. So just very quickly, the rule book is 64 pages, which is quite hefty, but it's full colour and lists everything you need to know how to play. Now, the rulebook has received some criticism that things aren't too clear, and I must admit I had to look up certain things, but on the whole, not bad at all. The game also comes with plenty of player aids, which are really handy. This one's like a booklet. This gives you all your actions that you can do and modifiers. Then we get your enemy activity checks and your packages, so when enemy forces come in. And then we get a mission playbook, we get our cards, and we get our display where our platoons and commands are going to be placed. So the game also covers 3 periods. So we have Normandy 1944, we have Korea, and we have Vietnam. Now today I'm just going through the World War II, Normandy 1944, but there is plenty of game in this box. So the game works on location cards, as you can see laid out in front of us, and before a mission the player will draw these and place them according to the mission details. Now these cards have a board around them, and these green borders and white borders reflect line of sight, so a platoon or a unit can see into an adjacent card, but if there is a green border around it, they cannot see through the card. But if it had a white border like this and it was here, you'd be able to see right through. And there are hill cards, and a hill means obviously you're at a higher level, so therefore you would be able to see over a card and have line of sight over through that card. There's a hill card there. So when you place a hill card, you have to place another card on top of it, like so. So once the game is set up, the player has to organise his platoons and the structure of the mission. So let's take a look at that. So this is our command display, and as you can see here, we've got the CO HQ, who is our main guy. We've got the CO XO, CO First Sergeant, and then we've got 1, 2 and 3 platoons. Now platoon is made up of a platoon HQ, and then we have 3 squads, and these are 3 steps. And then the platoon HQ, before a mission, you have to choose whether you're going to use radios or field phones. Now I use field phones because they're more reliable. We'll talk more about this in a minute. So also attached to a platoon is an HMG team, a bazooka team, and a mortar. Now each mission varies, but just for the moment that's what we've got. And we also get, according to the mission, we might get a artillery forward observer or a mortar forward observer, and they can call in a barrage from off map. So at the top here we have our counters for the COHQ, and the rest of the HQs, and when we draw a card, the numbers here are for how many commands we get. So let's have a look at how the actual card part of the game, the actual command part of the game works. Okay, so the action deck is what you're going to be using a lot in this game. So basically you're going to draw cards for each of your, well, you start with your CO, and the number he's looking for is in this helmet here. So this is a 4, but this is modified. So the CO draws a card, he has 4 commands, but he's green, so it goes down by 1, so we'd have 3, but because we've got no contact on the battlefield, it goes back up by 1, so he has 4. And then what you do is place your CO HQ on the number 4 to show he's got 4 commands. Then, so the CO HQ has received those commands from battalion. So now he can issue orders to his staff or his platoons. So let's say, for instance, he's going to issue an order to the 1st platoon. So we move the CO HQ down to 3 because he's issued an order, and we draw a card. So this would be for the 1st platoon HQ, and the 1st platoon HQ receives a 3, but remember they're green, so it goes down to a 2, but back up to a 3 because there's no contact on the map. So then 1st platoon would have 3 commands, and then the platoon HQ can issue orders to his guys to start doing things. And the XO and the 1st sergeant, if they don't receive an order, they automatically get 1 order. And also you can save commands, so you can save a certain amount depending what level you are, and then they will come into effect next command phase. So you go through like that. If the CO didn't get a good draw on commands and he didn't issue an order to any of the platoons will act on their initiative. So they will draw a card and use this number, and again it's modified, so it go down to down to 2, back up to 3 because of no contact, and then they will use their initiative. After the platoons have done that, you then get a general initiative where you draw, and it's not modified, so you'd have 3, and then any units can use that as a general initiative. So that's how the command structure works. So you are getting command points to use, and it all comes from the COHQ first. So the big part of the game is communication. So your CO has to be in contact with the platoons, the other COs, etc. So how we do that is either by a radio or a field telephone. So let's just show an example. We have a COHQ in this card, and they are on a field telephone, and they're on PRC25 network, and the platoon HQ is adjacent to him in this card here. So the CO can issue an order to this platoon because he is adjacent. They are in communication like this. If this 1st platoon was over here, he cannot issue an order to him because he's not adjacent to him. But what we have are phone lines. So phone line, a platoon or a unit can lay a phone line to keep in communication. So now the CO would be able to issue orders to the 1st platoon HQ because they have this communication of the phone line. Now this phone line can get damaged by incoming fire, and if that happens you flip and the line is cut and the communication is stopped. So it's an important part of communicating, and I found it difficult at first to I kept forgetting, oh, I've got to got to make sure that I've got that communication and laying phone lines. But you've got to be careful because you don't get a massive amount of these phone lines. So that's how communication works. Now if they were using a radio, they can issue orders if they're adjacent, but if the platoon HQ was undercover, the radio doesn't work undercover. The signal's not good enough, so the CO could not issue orders to him. And why you want the CO to be issuing orders to platoon HQs is because they stand a better chance of getting more orders than they do if they use their initiative. So that's a big part of the game, communicating. So just imagine our platoon HQ is up there and he's here. Well, we need a form of communication, so that phone line needs to be there, so you're tracing that line through. And then if you had a second platoon up here, they're going to be cut off because let's just say they haven't got a phone line, then he can't communicate through there. So it's a really important part of the game. I know using radios is fun though, because it presents more of a challenge, because you want your guys to get into cover and the radios don't work undercover. So let's just show a little example of how a turn kind of works. Okay, so for this example, we've got the first platoon here in the staging area, and we've got the CO here. Now, they can be on any card and they are adjacent to each other in the staging area, it doesn't matter. So the CO draws a card, he gets 4, goes down to 3, back up to 4 because we've got no contact. So he's got 4 commands, he's issuing 1 command to the first platoon HQ because we are in contact. Then the platoon HQ, first platoon, draws, he gets a 4, -1 because he's green, back up to 4 because there's no contact. So first platoon HQ can now issue 4 orders to his platoon. So in this example, he's going to issue an order to the HMG team here. So the HMG team, that's focus. No, not going to focus. There we go. HMG teams, he's going to issue an order for them to move. So they move into that card there. Now whenever a unit or platoon moves, they become exposed. So they're exposed, they're on the move. So we place that there. Now, this team are now by themselves. They can't receive an order from the first platoon HQ because they're not in communication. This HMG team doesn't have a radio, it doesn't have a phone. So they're on their own for the minute. And let's also say that he's going to send forward the bazooka team. So they go forward and they become exposed. So anytime you move, you become exposed, like so. Now he's got 2 orders left. He's going to bank those. So he flips his counter and he's got 2 stored for next turn. So now let's say we've gone through the other platoons and we get to the general initiative phase. So we draw and we see we get 2. So we get 2 general initiative. So these guys can now use their own initiative to perform an action. So we've got 2. So each of these guys are going to search for cover. So how that works is we look at the card. Now it says 3, so we draw 3 cards and we're looking for the word cover. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and we've got the word cover. So that first guy has found cover. Now we can have up to 2 cover markers in this location. So a cover counter goes over him, so that's going to give him some cover, that's good. And the other guy's going to use his initiative. So he draws 1, 2, 3, and luckily enough he's found cover. Now even if you drew cover on the first one, you always have to draw the correct amount of cards. So he's found some cover. So we put a cover counter on top of him. Like so. Now, after the general initiative phase, we are complete. We now go to our mutual capture and retreat phase, but none of that applies at the moment. So we go to evaluate potential contact markers. Now this is where the game really kicks off. So in each card you have a potential contact marker. So potential contact C, and the mission will tell you what to place. So you get a C, B and A, and in this row, first row of the mission, we got C's. So any friendly units on a card with a potential contact marker have to draw to see if they run into German forces. So what we have is this card that tells us. So we've got a C, and at the moment we've got no contact. So we're going to draw 4 cards. So we draw 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we didn't get the word contact. So that means there's no contact. So that marker is removed. They didn't run into any contacts. But let's say they did run into contacts. You drew a contact. Now you have to draw to see what contact it is. So you draw on a 10. So the game does not have dice. The game has a card dice system, if that makes sense. So you draw on a 10, and under the 10 is a 1. So you'd look at 1 on a C in our mission book, and a C on a 1 is mines. So we'd place mines. But for this example, I'm going to place an LMG nest because I want to show you how that works. So we get an LMG, so a German LMG, and they are under foxholes. Then you draw to see where they're placed. So you draw on a 10 again and a 6. So you look at 6 in the unit placement. They're front at max line of sight. So front is directly in front. Now max line of sight is this card, adjacent. If they were here, they couldn't see. So it has to be here. So they're going to be in the village. So we place that there, like so. And it will tell you whether the Germans or the unit is spotted. In this case, they are not spotted. So we take that potential contact marker with a question mark and put it on top. So they're not spotted. Now that means we can't fire at them, but they can fire at us. So this is where the game can get a little bit confusing. Combat is kind of automatic in a sense that you place markers down and guys are just firing at each other. So the Germans, the LMG team, are going to place a PDF marker to show that they are firing into this card. Now, what type of fire do they have? They have an A, so they have automatic fire. So an automatic fire means they place an automatic weapons with a -1. So we place that in this card here. So the situation is the direction of fire is coming into our card, and we've placed the -1 there, and that's going to apply to everyone on that card. But we don't resolve that yet. So if we had forces on this one, we'd draw for potential contacts. Let's say there's no contacts, so that just gets removed. And a lot of the missions are, you need to clear these cards and capture your 2 primary objectives. So now we've resolved all potential contact markers. We go into combat effects segment. So this is where we resolve combat. Now we've only got 1 combat. Our guys don't have any fire on the Germans because they're not spotted. We'd have to wait until we get commands so we can attempt to spot them. Now, we look here, we have a -1. So this is where we add up the cards. So we've got a +1 in this orchard, and each of these teams have a +1 because of the cover they found. So they're at 2, and then you take a -1 off, so they're on a 1. So they're each going to draw a card and look at the left hand side of the card, and on a +1 he's hit. So that's unfortunate. So this guy's been hit. We then draw to see what happens to him. A P means a paralysed. Now, obviously, he's not a veteran, he's not green, he's a line. So he's paralysed. That means that his counter will get changed to a paralysed counter. So we take that off. Oh, we forgot the exposed, actually, so it would have been even worse because that's got -2. So we actually had a -3 in total. He still would have had a hit. So because he's a one-step unit, he's removed and paralysed counter is there. Now, if it was a platoon counter, this would be flipped, so he's down to his second step and the paralysed counter stays in effect. Now, you can get other results. A C, you get a casualty, and an L is a litter team. Now, a litter team can collect casualties, and you can designate a casualty point to bring your casualties back to, which is kind of cool. So, he's done that. Then we would resolve this guy. So he's got 2, -2 because of exposed is 0, and then a -1. He draws on a -1 and he's hit, and he gets the same result, a P. Now, on some of the cards, you get 2 results, so paralysed and a litter team. So this, you only use the first letter if it's a one-step team, if that makes sense. So if it was a platoon unit, both of these results would apply. So he would get flipped to his second side, become paralysed, and then flip to his last side and become a litter team. So that would practically be gone. So that's how the combat works. Now, let's say these guys, and after combat you clear markers. So you don't clear the combat markers because combat just continues, but you take off exposed markers. So let's say we're round to commands again, and the first platoon has used a command for himself to move into here. Now he can issue an order for these guys to attempt to spot. So they draw 2 cards, but it's modified because he's undercover in foxholes. You only get to draw 1. But we got this icon, the target. If you get that, they're spotted. So that comes off, and now we've spotted the LMG team in the village. So this PDF automatically flips to a 2-way because we're firing. Then we look at our units. Well, they're paralysed, so they're not going to be firing, but we've got a bazooka. Now bazooka says small arms fire, so we place a small arms fire, if I can find a counter for it. So small arms fire is a 0, so it's not very good, but we place that. So there's a firefight going on here now. But if you look at the G on this bazooka, focus very well, there you go, that means he can attempt to do a grenade attack. So the platoon, platoon HQ, if he had enough orders, is going to order him to do a grenade attack, and we draw 2 cards looking for a grenade icon, and we don't get it. But if we did get that, we can place a grenade. Now grenade has a -4, and a grenade is pretty brutal, so it'd have a -4, so that'd be placed. Now these markers do not add up unless they are concentrated fire markers. So the small arms doesn't apply, the highest one does, so the grenade would apply now. So a -4, let's say it's the combat segment again, a -4, we draw, -4 is a hit, then we draw, and he becomes paralysed, so that machine gun team would become paralysed. So grenades really are a good way of dealing with enemies. Now, if we had a team here, for instance, and they started firing because they have line of sight, they started firing, the Germans, the LMG team, are receiving fire from 2 different positions. So that is a crossfire. So we place a crossfire marker. If I can find one. Now, crossfire marker adds a -1. So you're just adding more chance of damaging the guy. So here you'd have a -1 crossfire marker, and now you'd have -4 from the grenade and a -1 from the crossfire marker. So that's how combat works, and when you have quite a few units on the board, it can get quite confusing because you have PDFs coming from all different directions. But this is just showing what way the fire is coming from. Now, one thing we haven't touched on is the enemy activity check. So any enemies on the cards or board, they will do an enemy activity check. So you get this here. Now, in the mission, it will tell you if they are delay, hasty or deliberate. So let's say they're deliberate. Now they're an LMG team, you just go through the options. So on same card as US, no. On same card as US, no. So you get to here where they are under fire but not under cover. That doesn't apply. So it's right down here. They're trading fire and their NCM of units, VOF, is better. No, it's not. It's equal or greater because we've got a grenade on him. So you draw on a 2. So we draw. We look at 2 and we get a 2. So on a 2 is a grenade attack or concentrated fire. So that is telling you that these Germans are going to do a grenade attack into here or concentrated fire. And they would draw their 2 cards looking to get that result. So, and you would do that for every enemy unit on the board. So, the other thing is, if we wiped out these guys, if they became a casualty, our units are still going to fire. They're still going to fire until our HQ or platoon HQ tells them to cease fire. Now, the reason that's important is because we track ammo. So these guys could just blat away for no reason. They need to be under command. So the platoon HQ would have to say to units in here, cease fire. Or the COHQ. Also, before the mission starts, you can use your assets. So here we have a flare, red star parachute. You could use one of these or a smoke and deploy that, and that could tell units to cease fire. So the thing is, what I'm showing you here, there are like 101 rules that apply to every situation, so it can get quite confusing. And I'm not saying I'm a total expert in this, but I'm just showing you the basics. So that's how it works, and then you're going to try and secure your objectives. Now, some of the cool things you can do is you can turn with an order, you can turn a squad over like this and form a fire team. So you could break them into a fire team or an assault team and then push them forward. Now that's a good way. You do not want to push your platoon forward straight away, because the amount of times I have done a potential contact and got artillery come in and just wiped out most of the platoon. So you've got to be really careful, and that's where this game shines, because it starts to make you really think about how to command your troops. You know, as it would be, you are the commander, you are in control. But each mission has a set amount of turns, so you've got 10 turns, so you're going to get to a point where you go, I've not got many turns left, so I'm going to have to start pushing now, which makes for a fascinating game. So some of the other things is cover. On the card, in a village, you get a building. Now that means you can potentially get a strong building. I know I'm holding a light building, but I'm just showing you. And you draw a card on a 5 and refer to the player aid to see if you find heavy cover. And if you were in a church or something like that, you also get the chance of a multi-story, so you could go higher up and then you can see your line of sight increases. So that is pretty much everything. The other thing we need to just talk about is an infiltrate order. Now, you can issue an infiltrate order to a squad moving, and if they get this, they draw 2 cards. If they get this, then they are not exposed. They're on the move, they're low, they're not exposed. So that's a good way of doing it. An artillery from off map has to draw, it'll tell you in the mission book, has to draw a certain amount of cards, and if they get this icon, then their artillery marker comes in and you place the marker down. So that is the very basics. I mean, this is a light touch on how this game works. If I went through every single point, this video would probably be about 4 hours long. So I haven't got that amount of time. But you're basically going through the cards, trying to get to your objective, and you're resolving potential contacts. And it really builds this tension of, oh, we didn't get any contact, great. But then you move into another potential contact and bam, you're attacked. And the other thing is counterattacks from the Germans. So enemy higher HQ events. So an enemy higher HQ event is when from turn 2 onwards you're going to draw cards, and if you get the walkie-talkie icon, then you get an enemy HQ event and you draw on a 10. Now if you draw a 10, it depends actually, but if you draw a counter-attack, any US units on a card get a potential contact marker placed with them. So you've done all that work to remove these and then they're placed back. It is soul destroying. And also from turn 2 onwards, you as the player do this, and if you get a walkie-talkie icon, then you draw for an event, and all the events vary, and you will get certain experience points to use if you're playing the campaign. So that is the basics of Fields of Fire. In my opinion, an absolutely fantastic game, extremely steep learning curve, but it's worth your time to get into it and play it. I'm still making mistakes now, but I really enjoy the game. For a solitaire game, so as a solitaire game, this one is up there. This is definitely in my top 2 now. There's no dice in it. I think the reason it's hard is it's not hard, it's just a lot to remember. It's a different game, it's a different system to anything else. So you just have to try and learn it the best you can, and then all of a sudden it clicks and away you go. And it's hard. It presents a real challenge, which is a good thing, because that's why we play these games. We want a challenge. But it's also fun. So definitely a thumbs up from me. So if you've liked this video, guys, make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.